Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, my dear students. Today we are going to discuss the second part of this lecture series and research. And today, previously, if you remember, we discussed the synopsis, the various important parts of the synopsis, the need for synopsis, and why we develop the synopsis and research proposals. Today, we will mainly discuss the 7 or 8 points of the research process. Now, the research process, we discussed last time that if we, some of the very famous quotations from Robert Merton, for example, anticipatory plagiarism occurs when someone steals your original idea and publishes it 100 years before you were born. So originality is undetected plagiarism. Certainly the plagiarism and dealing with the fallout of it was the most difficult thing I have ever faced since I started writing. Nora Roberts. The only ism Hollywood believes is plagiarism. The secret to creativity is knowing how to hide what sources, Albert Einstein. Now, the research, according to the Merriam-Webster definition, is a careful and diligent search. Studious inquiry or examination, spatial investigation or experimentations aimed at the discovery and interpretation of facts, revision of accepted theories of laws in the light of new facts, or practical applications of such new or revised theories of law. The collecting of information about a particular object. So research is normally the process in which we try to explore some new boundaries of the knowledge, or we sometimes try to enhance the present understanding about the natural phenomena, or we want to aid to the existing body of knowledge. Now, we combine the past work, which is normally available in the form of literature review, and then we try to blend our present efforts to create the future. So it is both fun and frustration, because when the life moves forward and you are doing research, then certainly you are enjoying it. And frustration is that once you are doing the graduate research, you will be faced with situation where you will be having a resource crunch, time crunch. Sometimes the data reliability may be a problem. Sometimes the analysis may become a problem. And under such circumstances, certainly the frustration would come. The research is an incremental process which aids in step-by-step approach, and which the insight is gained through the step-by-step process. Building on other work and contribution to your own work. Yes, you will try to build on the work of others, and then you would try to, so the foundation of your understanding would be certainly based on the work, the quality work earlier done by the previous scientists. So it is established novel facts usually using a scientific method. The primary purpose of the basic research as opposed to the applied research is discovering, interpreting, and development of the methods and system for the advancement of human knowledge on a wide variety of scientific matters are our world and the universe. So normally, the pure research is more applied to the natural phenomenon, to the fundamental principles, and it is relatively difficult in the sense that you most of the time try to sometimes challenge the existing theories or laws. The scientific research is more like applied research, in which the principle of the pure research are applied to the solve the problems and the issues faced by the scientist community. Now, the scope of research can be at different level. For example, in the undergraduate level, we have some research, and then we go to the master level, which includes master and MS, and then we have the PhD research. So in normal, in the PhD research, we try to see that there is an expected world level contribution to the body of knowledge, and the background investigation of all the past work. Significant past work is done in the PhD work, and a meaningful addition to the world knowledge is expected. Now, this may not be new knowledge all the time, but certainly the data or the enhancement of the existing understanding. Our body of knowledge itself is also a PhD work. In the undergraduate students, we may be working on the local or national issues, and we would try to see that if we can aid some uh, knowledge to better understand the local or national problems. So normally we have the background investigation, and then we would like to see that how this is going to enhance. Now, if you look at the global spending on the research and development, because you see that the development, which is basically the process in which we are consuming the research outcomes to develop the new products and services, is one of the biggest, uh, part of the research in the world. And the United States is almost spending 34% of the total global spending on the research and development. And that then shows the quality of the research which is being done in the United States, and how this research is then consumed by the development in terms of bringing the new solutions and products to the society. For example, in 2011, US alone spent almost $33 billion in funding on science, and similarly, $6 billion were spent on the engineering. So combined, about $40 billion were spent on the R&D sector in the United States. In 2011, the Barack Obama, the then president of the United States, requested something like 146 million or 146 billion R&D budget in financial year 2011, and much of this research was supposed to be devoted towards the disease and treatment of the pandemics. Now, this is showing you the distribution of the global focus and trend in the mm, uh, research and development. And if you see at the top, even today is the health investment in the R&D. And if we look back into the dynamics of these pandemics and epidemics, the world has been trying to bring the new type of treatments, and some of the very highly invested the health sectors were, for example, the treating with the aging, anti-aging, and things like we had heart diseases and things like that. So still the largest component of the R&D investment is going to the health sector, and we expect that after the COVID-19, the world is pledging a very huge investment into the R&D in the health emergencies, because the world could see that the vaccine development against that COVID-19 took place at a very a long time, and this ultimately impacted the human and the world economy to the greater extent. So certainly the health R&D would continue to lead the world. In coming years, it's supposed to be doubling and even tripling. Then that is followed by space research, and then we have the energy research, and then the natural resource management, or environmental research, and the general research. So by and large, we see that the biggest two or three sector of the R&D investments are health, space technology, and then followed by the uh, renewable energy or energy. Now, we discussed last time that the even the investment of the United States and Japan together exceeds the R&D of other 8 countries in the top 10 by 5 times. And this shows the success of these economies in creating the knowledge economy, which is based on a development of new products and services, and that is definitely based on the research. Now, this is a very interesting table which shows us the distribution of the R&D per capita in different parts of the world. And again, the United States is one of the top countries which is spending almost in 2011. This was about 405 billion dollars were spent on the R&D, and that was about 2.7% of the GDP of the United States, and the per capita expenditure on the R&D something like $1,275. And this is, you can see that this is the total per capita income of Pakistan, which may be around $1,500. I don't know, because now the dollar price has been increased, so definitely we can expect that the per capita income in terms of dollar would have reduced. And that is then followed by China. In terms of volume, the investment of China is no doubt 296 billion. But if you look at the per capita investment of R&D in China, that is 2 less as compared to United States, which is 6 times less than the. And then this is followed by Japan. Japan, again, the volume is less, but the per capita per capita expenditure on R&D is as high as United States, and that's why we say that if we just combine these two, and even if we make the South Korea, which is even more than the United States and Japan in terms of per capita investment, then so this is just showing us, and interestingly, the India stands at number 8, which is showing about 29 dollars per capita, but the volume is $36.1 billion. Though the population of the United States is very large, of India is very large, but still I think the contribution or the GDP expenditure is about 1%, which is very high. Now, the benefits of this R&D is that we try to create new products. We try to re-engineer the products, improve the features of the product. We try to bring new customer, and we discussed this last time that we are creating the knowledge economies, and the R&D would depend the talent, innovation, and other people working. Companies can spend less money on R&D and still yield good results. So if you have a better R&D, you can have a better results, and you without spending too much, you can have a good result in re-engineering the products, improving the product features, in enhancing the market for your products. Same is the case with the R&D is trying to match the market, and with the better R&D, we can meet the expectations of the market, and certainly the R&D would increase the reputation of the organization. Now, research is important for us because we sustain a good academic background. I would like to change the presentation. There is some problem with the presentation, I think, so I stop sharing, and I'll upload another presentation in a couple of seconds. Let me just pass the recording, and then we see that how can we. Okay, I'm sorry, there was a problem with uploading the. Okay, so the type of research is normally the research has been divided under three major categories. The first is the application of the research and the finding of research. The second is objective. The third one is the mode of inquiry. If we go for the application perspective, it may be pure research or it may be applied research. And if we go from the objective perspective, that what really want to do with the research, it may be descriptive, or it may be exploratory, it may be correlational or explanatory. We will discuss these. And if we go by the mode of inquiry, it may be quantitative and qualitative, and we will discuss all these types of research. Now, the pure and applied, we discussed this in a couple of minutes, that the pure research is basically applied in, where the testing of theories and hypotheses that are intellectually challenging to the researcher, but may or may not have practical application at the present time or in the future. Thus, such work often involves the testing of hypotheses containing very abstract and specialized concepts. And as I already discussed, that most of the time in the pure research, we are trying to better understand the existing theories and principles and natural phenomena and in the laws and the theories which are governing the various natural phenomena. So in the short term, we may not be having the better application of the pure research, but certainly it is very important because the pure research is basically very real research in the sense that it creates a real knowledge. In fact, it improve the or enhance the horizons of knowledge. In the applied research, which is most of the research in the present world, in which the principle of research are applied to solve the existing problems and services, and to see that how these principles can be used to solve the problems, and these problems of different nature are then sorted out with the help of these research. So most of the research in the social sciences is applied. In other words, the research techniques, procedure, and methods that form the body of the research methodology are applied to the collection of information about various aspects of the situation, issue, problem, or phenomenon, so that the information gathered can be used in other ways, such as the policy formulation, administration, and the enhancement of the understanding of phenomena. So the most of the research which we are doing at the moment is mostly applied research, in which we are trying to see that how the various theories can be applied to get some implications of the various problems, the policy matters, the environmental policies, the HR policies, and all these impacts. Now, when we go from the objectives perspective, there can be a descriptive study which attempts to describe the systematically a situation, problem, phenomenon, service, or program, or provides information about, say, the living condition of a community or describe attitude towards an issue. So this is most of the time the research in which we have more level of description, and we try to attempt to describe the type of services provided by an organization, the administration structure, and so on. The main purpose of such studies is to describe what is prevalent with respect to the issue and problem. So the descriptive research is more explaining the problem in terms of description and how the various issues have been linked together. Now, the correlational study is described by its name, is trying to explain the relationship or association or interdependence of different aspects of the study. For example, how the compensation will affect the productivity in the organization, and how the psychological mentoring will help the retention of the employees. So this is a kind of correlational research in which we would try to see that what can be the impact and research of what can be the relationship of one decision or one policy or one element to the other. What is the impact of the advertisement campaign on the sale of a product? So how the advertisement campaign is affecting the sale of the products, what is the relationship between stressful living and in the incidence of heart attacks? This is another study in which we would try to see that how the heart attacks can be linked to the stressful living of the people. And what is the relationship between the fertility and mortality? What is the relationship between technology and unemployment? So these are some of the correlational studies in which we try to see that what are the relationship of one or more variable to the other in terms of its impact. Now, the explanatory research attempts to clarify why and how there is a relationship between two aspects of a situation or phenomenon. Now, this is a research in which normally we try to explain the situations. For example, if we take the same examples, that why stressful living results in heart attacks, why a decline in mortality is followed a fertility decline, and how. So this is basically, we try to see the relationship between different factors, and we try to explain their networks, their relationship, and the tree analysis, and then we try to see. So this is most of the time very kind of desk study, desk research in which we try to explain based on the existing body of knowledge. And even we can have some interviews and some focus group discussions and maybe questionnaires, and we would try to see that why this phenomena. So we are trying to answer the question to the problem. The relationship, we try to see the relationship, but here we try to see that why it is, if for example, there's a positive relationship between the heart attacks and the stressful condition, then we need to answer the question why. And this why would then definitely involve a lot of physiological assessment, psychological assessment, medical assessments, and things like that. In exploratory research, which is one of the most difficult part of kind of research, in which we try to explore the problem, and most of the time we don't know too much about the problem. For example, if Karakoram International University tried to explore the fact that why the KIU board has been, why the school and colleges have been de-affiliated from the KIU external examination, and they have been attached to the federal board. This is a kind of exploratory study in which we would start from a very little known facts, and then we try to explore it. Now, the exploratory study is normally very difficult in the sense that you most of the time start from very little knowledge about the problem, and then you try to explore the various options and various relationships. If we go based on the inquiry, we discussed that there can be two types, that one is qualitative, another is quantitative, and it may be structured approach, it may be unstructured approach. For example, everything that forms the research process, objective, design, sample, in the question that you plan to ask are predetermined. So this is a structured approach. The structured approach is more appropriate to determine the extent of problem, issue, or phenomena. So normally in the master thesis or the master research, we expect to have the structured approach. The structured approach, the unstructured approach, is predominantly used to explore its nature. In other words, variation, diversity, persists in phenomena, issue, problem, are in issues. For example, if you want to research the different perspectives of an issue, the problem experienced by people living in the community, or a different views people hold towards the issue, then these are better explored using unstructured. Because in this kind of study, you cannot restrict the responses to a very structured inquiry. The structured inquiry is further divided into qualitative and quantitative. The qualitative normally describes the situation or phenomena, events or problems. For example, effect of absenteeism on the productivity. The information is gathered through variable measures or nominal or ordinal scales. But in quantitative research, the variation is normally in phenomena is measured, and this is measured in terms of magnitude. We use the other kind of ordinal or even the sometimes the ratio scales are used. Now, these are 7 very famous steps, and we will discuss this in the next slide, because some of the authors have explained these in 8 steps. That first of all, we try to formulate a research problem, and this research problem will come from the consideration and steps in the formulation and research problem. It is coming from the literature review at one side, and then variation in hypothesis definition and uh, different type of topologies are then in the operational step of formulating a research problem, we would need some things like based on the literature review, and we will require some variables and hypothesis definition and typology, etc. The second step is conceptualizing research design, which is the basically the framework of your design. And for this, we would need uh, different functions and study design. And the next is uh, mm, then you design or construct the instrument for data collection, and then you go to the selection of sample, population and sample. Then you go for writing the research proposal, which may be a kind of synopsis, and then you collect the data, you analyze the data or process the data, and then you write the research proposal. The same is given in this slide also, but I think it's not better visible. This slide gives us a very comprehensive understanding of what we discussed in the last slide. That on the left side we see that what are the question in our mind, and then the steps you will take in the research process, and then what are the important elements of these steps. For example, why is the problem? What is the problem, and why it should be studied? So, what is your research problem? Now, the step you need to have the selection, analysis, and statement of the research problem. And for this, you need to identify the problem. You need to identify the problem priorities. You need to have the analysis and justification why this is a problem, and what is the statement of your problem. You would need to define the problem. Once you go for the next step, this is literature review. That is basically the question you normally need to answer is that what is the information available about that problem, and the literature review and other available information would help you to see that what is the available information. Why do we want to carry out the research? What to do? What do we hope to achieve? Now, this is basically the formulation of the research objectives or significance, that why this research is important and what are the objectives. Now, these objectives can be general and specific, and there must be some hypothesis or research questions also. And normally we say that these objectives must be SMART, that is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. And then we go, once the objectives have been defined, then we go for the research methodology. In the research methodology, the questions in our mind is that what additional data do we need to meet our research objective? How would we be going to collect the information about our research? So in this normally research methodology or design, we try to see that what are the variables, what are the relationship, what is the nature of study. We discussed different types of studies in the previous slides. What will be the data collection techniques, sampling technique, how the data would be collected, how it would be analyzed, and then what will be ethical consideration in the data collection and analysis, and how would we test the data collection instrument which we normally have. So once this is done, then we develop the work plan that who will do what and when. And this is very important to spell out the various milestone of your research and see that the time and the money and the resources you need to carry out the research. And then the next is what resources would you need, which is the budget for the research, and where from these resources would come. So the material, money, and human support you normally budget, and then you go to the plan for the project administration and utilization of the results, and how this result will be used for the benefit of the stakeholders. And for this, you have the administration, monitoring, identification, and then finally you have a summary and writing and all these. Now, the step number one, which is very important, is to formulate your research problem. What you intend to do as a research, this form the foundation of the entire research process, since you should examine it thoroughly, carefully, and critically. It is extremely important to evaluate the research problem in the light of the financial resources at your disposal, the time available, and your own and your research supervisor expertise and knowledge in the field of study. So please make your research problem very relevant, very precise, and the scope of the research problem should be well defined so that tomorrow you don't have the data collection issue. And the expertise is really very important with your supervisor. The second step is the conceptualization of the research design, which is the main function of the research design to explain how you will find answer to your research questions. The research design set out the specific details of your inquiry. An appropriate research design is crucial, enabling you to arrive at valid findings, comparisons, and conclusions. A faulty design results in the misleading findings. It is therefore tantamount to wasting the human and financial resources. So the problem statement and the research design are the two very important parts of the research success. And if it is not properly, the problem is not properly stated and the research is not properly designed, then definitely you will lose the resources. And many times you may redo your research if it is not proved successful. While you are selecting the research design, it should be valid, it should be workable, and it should be manageable. The step number three is to construct the instrument for data collection. The construction of a research instrument is the first practical step in carrying out this study. You will need to decide how you are going to collect the data for the proposed study and then construct a research instrument for data collection. So this is very important. Normally, the questionnaire survey, we are trying to use the existing questionnaire models. If you are planning to collect data specifically from your study, which is primary data, you need either to construct a research instrument or to select what data has already been constructed. Now, the construction of a new instrument is really very difficult, and its testing would create a lot of issues. So it is normally recommended that an existing instrument may be used successfully. If you are using secondary data, which is the already available information, you will need to identify what information is needed and then develop a form to extract the required data. In order to determine what information is required, you need to go through the same process as for the primary data. The next step is the sample selection, very important because the population of your interest may be very large and you may not be able to collect the data from all the people. For example, if you are collecting the data about a disease, now the people may be sometime in million and you may not be able to collect the data from the entire population within the study area. So to avoid this problem, we are trying to see that how can we then collect the data from the samples. Now the sampling decision is really very important, that what is the key aim of the sampling, and the avoidance of bias, that how you can avoid the bias and your person liking, disliking, and the attainment of maximum precision. So these are the three very fundamental decisions about the sampling, that what are your aim, how would you avoid the bias, and then finally, how would you attain the maximum precision. Now, some of the very common sampling designs are, for example, the random probability sampling, non-random, which is sometimes called the non-probability the sampling. We will discuss all these in the rest of the lectures. And then you have the mixed sampling design, in which you can mix both the probability and non-probability sampling. We will discuss this later in the sampling lecture. The type of sampling strategy you will use will influence your ability to make generalization from the sample finding about the study. So this is very important. Your selection of the sampling design is really very important for the generalization of your study. The fifth very important step is to writing a research proposal or synopsis, that once you have all these things done, then you would write a research proposal for funding. Normally, it is very important because if you are looking for a funded research, then definitely your research proposal should be very convincing and it should attract good funding from the sponsors. So the overall plan called a research proposal or synopsis tell the readers about your research problem and how would you are planning to investigate. Broadly, a research proposal main function is to detail the operational plan for obtaining answers to your research questions. In doing so, it ensures and reassures the readers of the validity of methodology to obtain the answers accurately. Universities and other institutions may have different requirements regarding style and content of the research proposal, and even the sponsors may have some templates and guidelines to have in the phase three, the sixth step is, which is very important, is the collection data. Once the research proposal is approved, has been approved, and the funding has been released, then you go for the collection of data, which is really very important. Many methods could be used to gather the research data. As part of the research design, you decided upon the procedure you wanted to adopt and collect. In this phase, you actually collect the data. For example, depending on your plans, you might commence interviews, you can mail out, email the questionnaire survey, or you can even go for a conduct focal group discussions or interviews and things like that. Even the observation can be done to see that how the responses can be collected. Once the data has been collected, the seventh very important step of the research is to evaluate and analyze the data. So this will mainly depend on two things: that what kind of information would you need from your data? For example, do you need some descriptive information, some quantitative or qualitative or attitudinal? So the purpose of your information for the research would determine the analysis, the way you want to communicate. And the second important thing is that how would you like to communicate the findings to the stakeholders and readers? So based on these two fundamental objectives, we would try to see that what kind particular way of evaluating the data will be used. In addition to the qualitative and quantitative distinction, it's important that data analysis, that you consider whether data is analyzed manually or by computer. Since we are using a number of computer tools now, it is very important to understand the use of each and every computer tool. Unfortunately, most of the students know about the tool, but they don't know about the real probability treatment or the analytical treatment of the data. So I would suggest that the student should also know the rationale behind the use of these various tools. We are using a couple of tools like MOS, structure equation modeling, NView, and there are many other coming up, like we have the R and Python and things like that. Now, once the data has been analyzed and the observation and everything has been consolidated, the last step is writing a good research report. Remember that nobody would know you. There is nothing better relationship between you and the community and the reader than your report. So report is basically the most important part. Two broad categories of reports, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. As mentioned earlier, the distinction is more academic than as in the most study, you need to combine the quantitative and qualitative skills. Nevertheless, these are some solely qualitative and some solely quantitative studies also. Writing a report is the last and for many the most difficult step of the research process. This report informs the world that you have done, what you have done, and what you have discovered, and what conclusions you have made from your findings. If you are clear about the whole process, you will also be clear about the way you want to write your report. Your report should be written in an academic style and be divided into different chapters and sections upon the main themes. So with this last slide, I'll go to wind up my presentation. Let me tell the students that this was the second lecture of the research series, and we will have something like 10 or 12 more research lectures in which we would explain each and every component of the research process. Maybe at least 8 lectures, and we may go for even 10 to 12 lectures. This is my own reflections about the research that you have started from the research problem, and this may create some confusion in your mind, and then you try to move and find some path to the thorough literature review, and that will help you to find the gaps in methodology for addressing your problem. And from this, you would go to collect the primary data from your interest, and then you would try to create new information and knowledge to validate or otherwise your objective hypothesis and research question. Through your research report, you would present your work in a dispassionate, impersonal manner to the learned community of the readers, and they should provoke and they should incite more curiosity in the readers, in the minds of readers. I believe that there is nothing fascinating and interesting than research. So thank you very much, and have a nice time. Good evening. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.